Tripatamaham Bande Shikrindarinam Kripatamaham Bande Paramanandamadav Sri Chaitanya Ishwaram Katachana Smriti Yasmin Dushkaram Sakaram Bhaveta Smriti Vipritam Syat Sri Chaitanya Mahamitam. Okay, so welcome back. We have 11 participants today. Okay, Rudradeep Nimai, is he not there? Oh, he's there. Rudradeep Nimai,
Yes,
Prabhu.
I'm here.
Yeah.
Do we stop here, Prabhu?
Yes, Prabhuji, if I remember, yes. We have to start from the Toronto August 7th.
Yeah. Okay. Any volunteers to read today?
Prabhuji, I can do this service too.
Yeah, you need to be closer to your mic a little bit.
Yes, Prabhuji, yes. Now is it okay, Prabhu? Is it okay now, Prabhu?
It's better.
Okay.
Can everyone else hear her? Can someone respond?
Can, Prabhu.
Okay.
Can.
Okay, I'll continue.
Okay, please go ahead.
Toronto, August 7, 1975. Despite a severe toothache and swollen jaw, Srila Prabhupada continued with lectures, interviews, and his usual activities. He could not chew and took only pureed fruit. When asked if he would see a dentist, he told the devotees not to worry. He was used to difficulties. The Toronto temple was a small, rundown building, and Prabhupada was interested in helping the devotees relocate. All the real estate brokers they had approached had told them about a fabulous church for sale downtown. The temple president, Vishwakarma, had looked at the building, but the owners were asking almost $500,000 with a large down payment. When Prabhupada went to see the church, he decided that somehow they must get it. If necessary, he could send the total BBT collections for 2 months as a loan to the Toronto temple. Prabhupada told them to offer $300,000 cash, but when Uttama Shloka went, the church directors rejected the offer, saying they had already rejected an offer for much more. Srila Prabhupada did not give up the idea of getting the church, however, and he mentioned it before a meeting of Indians. Near the end of the program, when the host begged Prabhupada to return again to bless them, Prabhupada took the opportunity to request all present to please help the devotees raise money to purchase the church. Once they had actually purchased it, he said he would return to Toronto. Many of the gentlemen present promised to help. Suddenly, Srila Prabhupada's North American tour was interrupted. A telegram from Tejas in New Delhi announced that if Prabhupada wanted an interview with Indira Gandhi, he would have to come at once. The telegram contained no details, and his secretary was unable to reach the Delhi temple by phone. But Prabhupada didn't need to hear anything more. When an auspicious opportunity arose, he said a devotee should act at once. Harikesha planned the trip so they could stop in Montreal overnight. From Montreal, they would fly to Paris, where Prabhupada could rest before going to Delhi. As word of Prabhupada's imminent departure spread, several devotees in Toronto tried to see Prabhupada for last instructions about their projects. Rameshwara also phoned from Los Angeles, pressing Harikesha to ask Prabhupada a list of last-minute editorial questions regarding the fifth canto of Srimad Bhagavatam. The questions, however, concerning the Bhagavatam's explanation of the structure of the universe, Prabhupada rejected as unintelligent. He ordered the BBT to simply print the books as they were. Not only was the prospect of meeting with Prime Minister Gandhi prompting Prabhupada's return to India, but so were his uncompleted projects, especially Hare Krishna land in Bombay. Brahmananda Swami said he thought Prabhupada had been looking for such a chance to end his Western tour and get back into personally managing the projects in India. Prabhupada had just dictated a letter to Surabhi in Vrindavana expressing disappointment that things could not get done without him. You are all simply writing letters to me. Without my personal presence, there you cannot do anything. Simply correspondence. Anyway, be careful. There is no underhanded dealing in this transaction for purchasing land. It's very much risky. So be careful. Please send me a regular report of the Bombay construction. I'm very much anxious and will be glad to receive your regular report. Devotees in Boston, New Vrindavan, and New York received the news of Prabhupada's sudden departure with shock. He would not be visiting their temples, and they felt the impact of the stark realization that Srila Prabhupada could leave them at any moment. He was not obliged to stay with them, and they should not take his presence for granted. They had his instructions. This was sufficient. Of course, important decisions still had to be made. In Boston, the devotees had expected Prabhupada to look at a new building with them, but based on his instruction, they could become responsible and carry out his will even in his absence. The devotees who had recently received Prabhupada in their temples realized how valuable had been those moments. The personal association they had should be relished, remembered, and acted upon. The book distributors already knew that their work was most important to Prabhupada, and that was sufficient. The press workers in Los Angeles weren't dependent on Prabhupada staying in America. They had their mission, 17 books in 2 months, and they were working day and night. Srila Prabhupada's traveling in the US and Canada had been exactly in the mood of a wandering sannyasi, and he was showing his GPC men that they should not simply sit behind desks and manage, but should travel and preach. Traveling, Prabhupada stressed, did not mean aimless wandering or pleasure seeking. While traveling, the preacher had to do some substantial work for the Krishna Consciousness Society. And that also Srila Prabhupada has shown at the Dallas Gurukula, the Mississippi Farm Rath Yatra. In Detroit, he had secured a mansion, and in Toronto, he was praying for a wonderful church to be financed by the Indians. In Chicago, he had shown how to preach on contemporary issues like crime and women's liberation without compromise. His disciples could not match or imitate him, but his example of selfless work on behalf of Krishna should be their standard. In spite of Prabhupada's traveling to so many cities, most people in the United States did not recognize his position. Reporters would interview him, but their superficial stories in the newspapers drew little attention. To the press, Prabhupada was just another celebrity in the constant parade of faces and events. As Lord Krishna had predicted in Bhagavad Gita, out of thousands of men, only one seeks perfection. Srila Prabhupada, in his tireless search for that one person out of thousands, had shown his enthusiasm and willingness to speak with whoever came to see him. And through Rath Yatra and other public festivals, he was offering millions a first taste of potent spiritual life. Everyone moments, even one moment's association with a pure devotee could save them from a most inauspicious fate in their next life. Besides the hundreds of thousands.
Mati, can you just pause for a moment?
Yes.
So, Satsarup Maharaj brings out a very important point here, which Prabhupada also writes in the introduction to the Bhagavad Gita, or rather the preface, that even if one person becomes a pure devotee of the Lord, he would consider the Krishna consciousness movement to be successful. So here, Satsvarup Maharaj draws our attention to the same point that to the press, Prabhupada is just another celebrity in the constant parade of faces and events. As Lord Krishna had predicted in Bhagavad Gita, out of thousands of men, only one seeks perfection. So Prabhupada, in his tireless search for that one person out of thousands, had shown his enthusiasm and willingness to speak with whoever came to see him. Now, this is a very important point because the success of the Krishna consciousness movement is not how many people we make, how many people we how we make people, how many people we are able to make them to chant Hare Krishna. That is not the success of the Krishna consciousness movement. The success of the Krishna consciousness movement is how many pure devotees have we made. Now, when we say pure devotees, again, Prabhupada's idea was not necessarily always that someone who's attained love of God, but someone who has taken to the process of pure devotional service. Because the process of pure devotional service means, as Bhagavatam explains, Dharma Projita Kaitavotra and Parama Nirmatsarana Satam, that process which rejects all forms of mundane pursuit of Dharma, Artha, Kama and focuses only on attaining love of Godhead, that is called pure devotional service. Now, so when we say, are we successful in our preaching? This is how we are supposed to measure, or whether someone is successful in their preaching. The measure is how many people have made attaining love of Godhead the exclusive goal of their life. This is the success of prayer. This is a measure of success. Not that, oh, we met so many celebrities, we made, we talked to so many influential people, our YouTube videos have so many views, or all these things. They're all okay. But the goal is, as Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur would often say, the point is to take the harvest home, which means that in India, or in generally probably in other parts of the world also, you may have a nice crop growing in the field. It's nice when it is growing in the field, but Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur would say the point is to take the harvest home, which means that sometimes the wind can come and blow it away, or whatever. So it can get destroyed. So the point is to take the harvest home. So the point is, okay, we made someone chant Hare Krishna, nice. But have we made them to take up the process of pure devotional service, which is their exclusive goal is how to attain love of God. Now, when I say exclusive goal is how to attain love of God, that does not necessarily mean that they are free from all material desires. They may have material desires. As I mean, the 10 offensive chanting of the holy names is to maintain material desires. It does not mean to have material desires is not the disqualification. To maintain them. So one may have material desires, but there is a way to handle those desires in line with the principles of pure devotional service. So this point that Prabhupada in his tireless search for that one person out of thousands, it means that we are interested, as Prabhupada himself says in the preface, even if we make one person pure devotee, I would consider success. The success is defined by how many people have taken up to Krishna consciousness by preaching. So that is the definition of success. The definition of not success is not that we have made hundreds and thousands of people chant Hare Krishna. Okay, that is good. I mean, that's definitely Krishna consciousness, definitely good, commendable. But that is not the success of the movement. Success of the movement is how many people have taken to pure devotion. Because we may make somebody chant Hare Krishna, and they may have material desires, and they may, for material purposes, they may chant, and so many other things, So that is not the point. It is to make people chant Hare Krishna and take up to the process of pure devotion. It's not only to make people chant Hare Krishna. To make people chant Hare Krishna and take up to the process of pure devotional service. Okay, I just wanted to briefly mention this point. If there are any comments or questions on that particular point, we can take them now, and then we'll go ahead. Okay, so looks like there are no comments now or questions. So let's go ahead, Manoj.
Besides the hundreds of thousands who benefited incidentally, in each city, a fortunate few felt their lives greatly affected by Srila Prabhupada. Professor Thomas Hopkins in Philadelphia, Assemblyman John Porter in Chicago, a flight supervisor on the plane to San Francisco, an appreciative mother in Philadelphia, and many others all understood that their meeting with Srila Prabhupada was special. Srila Prabhupada often cited a specific reason for his touring. My duty, he had said in Berkeley, is to see that my disciples who have accepted me as Guru may not fall down. That is my anxiety. And as he had lovingly expressed it in Dallas, I have got so many children and grandchildren, so I have come to see them. He was a spiritual father of his disciples, and every ISKCON center was his home. While touring his movement in the West, Srila Prabhupada had felt satisfied that it was growing stronger. Opposition was also growing, but he took that as another sign of ISKCON's authenticity. His original plan was still intact, and on this tour, he had been pursuing it. America had a chance of becoming Krishna conscious. At least he and his disciples should try for that. If they succeed, then the whole world could be uplifted by their transcendental influence. Prabhupada liked preaching
Just a
in
point. I'm just a pause. I mean, recently I was coming across a place. I think it was a lecture or it was a transcript of something. But I remember very clearly that when Prabhupada says that if America becomes Krishna conscious, then the whole world will change and things like that. So someone asked, "Do you mean 100% of the population?" Prabhupada says, "No, even 10% would do." So when he says that, even 10% is a huge amount actually. So even if 10% of America becomes Krishna conscious, of course, he said this at that point in time. Probably America is not the most influential country now, or maybe it is. But in any case, at that point, it was the most influential country. So his point was that not necessarily that everybody had to become Krishna conscious to change the world. He said even 10%, 10% of America changes, then the whole world, it will impact the whole world. Please go ahead.
Prabhupada liked preaching in America. Mostly my students are American, he had said, and they helped me very kindly push on this movement. But one man in the San Diego crowd had shouted back that he wanted more sex than was allowed in Krishna consciousness. So Prabhupada's estimation was that Americans had good hearts, but that for want of Krishna consciousness, they were becoming completely confused, frustrated, and degraded. Srila Prabhupada had come first to America in 1965 to plant the seed of Krishna consciousness. That he had done. Now, with dozens of centers across the country and many other around the world, he was realizing that his ambitions were not going unfulfilled. He also accepted that to make Krishna consciousness the dominant force in America and the world was something he might not see in his lifetime. It's not one man's work, he had said, and he asked everyone, Americans, Indians, and all world citizens, to take part in distributing Lord Chaitanya's mercy. Only a rare few came forward to help him, however, and he worked with them. Touring, therefore, was but another attempt at making his organization as strong as possible while it was within his power to do so. Actually, he was living for others, and he didn't think he would live much longer. He wanted to continue touring, building ISKCON, saving as many lost souls as possible, and he wanted to impress upon his sincere followers and upon others who would read his books that every human being should take up this same work and live for the benefit of others by distributing Krishna consciousness. Shall I continue?
Yes, Mataji. Unless if there are any comments or questions,
Yeah.
because at the
Because
end
we
of every
come, yeah,
chapter
yeah, we
usually invites
completed
some
this
comments.
chapter. We completed this chapter.
Yeah. So we've completed the chapter. If there are any comments or questions, we can take them now, or we can also have it in the end, whatever. If you have anything, you can ask now, or you can even ask later. Okay, let's go ahead, Mataji.
Yeah.
The next chapter. Because in the book it is chapter 4, volume 6. I don't know what is the chapter number in the chapter number online.
I think Prabhuji has to scroll or next chapter.
Rudradeep Nimai, Prabhu, Hare Krishna. Maybe he's not at his desk.
I have my book, Prabhuji. If you want, I can continue, but the others cannot see if anybody is not
Yeah, I
having
have a book
the.
also. Maybe others also
Yeah,
don't have a.
yeah.
Let me just call him. Just give me a second.
Yes.
Okay. Okay, he's back. Can you hear me now? Hare Krishna.
Yes, Prabhu.
Okay, all right. Please go ahead, Maharaj.
Yes. At home in India. There were, of course, other reasons for Prabhupada's returning to India besides meeting Indira Gandhi. His regular rhythm had become to alternate touring the West with staying in India. He was leading his movement by traveling from center to center, but for at least 5 years now, he had devoted more of his time to India. His ambitious projects in Mayapur and Vrindavana, although increasing the prestige of Krishna consciousness movement, were by no means completed, and Hare Krishna land in Bombay was still only a construction site. Unlike in America and Europe, where Srila Prabhupada achieved his objectives by inspiring disciples to carry on the management, in India, he was the manager. He had to be. Otherwise, his Western disciples would be cheated and become dispirited. Pressing managerial decisions, therefore, brought him frequently to India. Moreover, he had a special inclination to be in India. He had a deep spiritual attraction to the holy dhamas. Vrindana was his home and Mayapur was his place of worship, and he liked the unique opportunities for meeting and influencing people in places like Bombay. His upcoming meeting with India's chief executive was the kind of opportunity that came rarely in the West. And in addition to all these reasons, Prabhupada also felt most relaxed and at home there. When breaking some of his commitments to visit more cities in the US, he had written to a disciple, I was not able to come to Atlanta because I was called here to India on urgent business. Also, I was feeling inconvenienced by so much travel. Prabhupada often referred to New York, London, and Los Angeles as his special homes and to America as his fatherland. And when a disciple had once remarked that Prabhupada would feel more at home in India, he had replied, my only home is the lotus feet of Krishna. Nevertheless, for whatever reason or combination of reasons, Srila Prabhupada was showing a definite preference for staying in India. Prabhupada was displeased to see how slowly the construction was progressing at Hare Krishna land in Bombay. The monsoons had flooded the foundation, and what little work had been done appeared to be of poor quality. The whole project should have been finished in 6 months, Prabhupada said, but he startled the devotees by saying, at least complete it within my life. Surabhi and Murthy showed him drawings for other temples. An interested person in Nellore near Hyderabad was speaking of donating land, and the devotees had drawn up plans for a temple complex complete with library and dormitories. Prabhupada approved the plans. The temple buildings, he said, should be traditional according to the Shastric directions, but the other buildings could incorporate more modern designs. He also studied and approved plans for temples in Hyderabad and Fiji. Early the next morning, Srila Prabhupada called for Surabhi and Murthy and again went over their various plans with detailed interest. He had little time left before his meeting with the Prime Minister. However, the next day he left for Delhi. New Delhi, August 22, 1975. At 9:15 in the morning, Srila Prabhupada and several of his leading disciples arrived at the Prime Minister's home where they were confronted by a formidable security check. 2 days before, the Prime Minister of Bangladesh had been assassinated and Mrs. Gandhi was rumored to be next. Armed soldiers therefore surrounded her residence. The guards at the outer gate decided that the foreigners could not go in. Srila Prabhupada alone could enter. While one guard opened the gate, another ushered Srila Prabhupada into a car, which carried him to the Prime Minister's front door. Meanwhile, the devotees waited in anxiety by the outer gate. Always some disciples would accompany Prabhupada wherever he went. His disciples worried, almost like doting parents, that he might need their assistance. In tiny, cramped handwriting, Srila Prabhupada had noted down in a small address book a list of points he wanted to discuss with Mrs. Gandhi. Grant immigration for 500 foreigners, all MPs initiated Brahmanas, Sanjaya the king, close slaughterhouses, chanting, meat eaters at home, no public meat eating, prostitution punishable, no religious group except Bhagavad Gita as it is, all government officers must join Kirtan at least twice a day, support Krishna consciousness all over the world. The most pressing item was at the head of the list. Mrs. Gandhi should grant permanent visas to Prabhupada's Western disciples in India. Just a few weeks before, some of the foreign devotees in Mayapur had been asked to leave the country. For years, Prabhupada had been asking for permanent visas whenever he met governors, members of parliament, or other men of influence. Devotees were constantly being asked to leave the country to renew their 6-month visas. The travel costs incurred and the disruption of devotee services seriously hampered ISKCON's work in India. Therefore, Prabhupada wanted Indira Gandhi to sanction up to 500 foreign disciples to stay permanently in India. The other points on Srila Prabhupada's list were scriptural directions for how the Prime Minister could make her leadership Krishna conscious in the spirit of the great Rajarshis of the Vedic age. These were the same tenets of God conscious leadership he preached wherever he went. And he had deep conviction that if the world's leaders would apply them, an era of peace, prosperity, and happiness would dawn. Indira Gandhi had a tendency toward authoritative control, so she should exercise it in terms of Vedic directions. Then her rule could become most effective and beneficial. A government official opened the door to Prabhupada's car, ushered him into the house, and brought him before the Prime Minister. As Prabhupada entered the room, Mrs. Gandhi stood up. Although she greeted him cordially and offered him a seat, he could immediately detect that she was distracted, fearful for her life. She openly admitted it and added that this was not therefore a good time for their meeting. Prabhupada felt that she would have preferred not to meet at all, but was allowing it only because she had promised. Her agreeing to see him, he felt, was an indication that she had some attraction for spiritual life. But he understood that on this visit at least, he could not introduce the extensive advice he had been contemplating. Mrs. Gandhi complimented Srila Prabhupada on the work he was doing all over the world. They are good boys, he replied, and he asked if she could arrange for permanent visas. She agreed, but again mentioned her present anxiety. They soon ended their talk, and Srila Prabhupada left. A few days later, while still in New Delhi, Srila Prabhupada received a letter from Rameshwara. The BBT in Los Angeles was miraculously fulfilling Srila Prabhupada's order to publish 17 volumes in 2 months. The composers, editors, artists, and workers had ecstatically finished their marathon on schedule. When the first books had come back from the printers and had been offered on the altar of Rukmini Dwarakadesha, the devotees had cried in transcendental bliss, chanting again and again the mantras to Srila Prabhupada. They were feeling the potency of the order of their spiritual master and seeing themselves as instruments in carrying out what had once seemed an impossible request. Today, our composer finished the last volumes of Chaitanya Charitamrita. By Wednesday next week, August 20th, all volumes will be at the printer. Now they are just starting to compose the fifth canto, and the entire canto will definitely be at the printer by Vyasa Puja Day. After promising delivery of books by October at the latest, the letter was signed by about 60 devotees, your unworthy servants at ISKCON Press. On their behalf, Rameshwara stated, "We have lost all desire to do anything except be engaged in producing and distributing your transcendental books by the millions in every town and village." Srila Prabhupada wrote back the next day from Delhi, "Regarding your desire for all 12 cantos, you will get it. Rest assured. Your so much ardent desire will be fulfilled by Krishna." On August 21, Rameshwara sent Srila Prabhupada a telegram. By the mercy of Lord Balarama, Nityananda, the last volume of Chaitanya Charitamrita is leaving today for the printer. By your mercy and divine order, it is done. Although Srila Prabhupada traveled on to Vrindavana, the devotees were able to dispatch advance copies of all 15 volumes to him by his 80th birthday on August 31st. Just after Prabhupada observed the ceremony in the temple, a devotee arrived in Vrindavana with the final 6 volumes of Chaitanya Charitamrita. With great relish and satisfaction, Srila Prabhupada examined the books. He was pleased with the artwork and quickly became absorbed in reading the pastimes of Lord Chaitanya. He felt so inspired. He remarked to the devotees in Vrindavana, that he was thinking of stopping all touring and just staying in Vrindavana and translating. The reciprocation of the devotees at ISKCON Press was so sincere that it increased Srila Prabhupada's desire to incorporate with them, reciprocate with them. He wrote to my dear Rameshwara and company, you have taken seriously the publishing and also the distribution of these books, and that is the success of our mission. You have taken seriously this work, and I know that my Guru Maharaja is pleased with you because he wanted this. So, by this endeavor, you will go back home, back to God. Although,
By this
Srila,
endeavor, you will
sorry,
all go back.
yes, you will all go back home, back to God. Although Srila Prabhupada had mentioned that he would like to sit in Vrindavana and simply translate Srimad Bhagavatam, his stay there was characterized by intensive management, not by writing. He had presided over the grand opening of her Krishna Balaram Mandir 4 months earlier, and now he would demonstrate how the temple should be run. The Krishna Balaram Mandir was a Vedic temple complex at a famous holy place, and it was being scrutinized by persons already strongly opinionated on how a temple should be run. Immediately, Prabhupada found discrepancies. In the guest house, which was for guests, not disciples, he found married disciples living with their children. This was not proper, he said, and these families would have to find other quarters nearby or leave Vrindavan. He also found problems with the plumbing, the municipal sewage system, the financial management, the deity worship, the cleanliness, and the devotees' behavior. Almost every area of temple life and every devotee required special attention. In the smallest discrepancies, Prabhupada would sometimes see the essence of all the problems and he would instantly point it out. And because his disciples took his words with utmost seriousness as coming directly from Krishna, his reprimands were often devastating. Prabhupada was a difficult taskmaster. A Vaishnava is said to be as soft as a rose and as hard as a thunderbolt. But Prabhupada began showing more the thunderbolt side of his personality. Sometimes a neophyte's conception of the spiritual master is that he must always be peaceful and pleased with everything that happens, and that this is a sign of his being situated in transcendental consciousness. Srila Prabhupada, however, demonstrated many moods, including anger. In its material form, anger, krodha, is described in Bhagavad Gita as occurring when one's lust or kama cannot be fully satisfied. A true sadhu, therefore, because he does not have lusty desires, does not become possessed by anger. The Vaishnava poet Narottama Das Thakura, however, declares that anger may also be used in serving Krishna. Narottama Das gives the example of Hanuman, the eternal servant of Lord Rama, who displayed his great anger in fighting against Ravana and the other demoniac enemies of the Lord. Rupa Goswami also wrote in Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu that a devotee should not tolerate blasphemy of Krishna or to the Vaishnavas, and that his response might justifiably be transcendental anger. Even Lord Krishna incited the anger of the non-violent Arjuna, inducing him to fight, and that fighting was transcendental, whereas Arjuna's reluctance to fight was material. Among sentimentalists and impersonalists, however, the image persists that a sadhu should never show anger. When at a large Pandal festival in Delhi, Srila Prabhupada had shown anger toward a man who spoke against Krishna. Many in the audience had misunderstood. Some had even walked out. Prabhupada's disciples could accept his anger. They even welcomed it theoretically, but to bear it was difficult. The spiritual master must cut through his student's false ego to engage that student in pure service. The Guru's show of anger, therefore, is good for the disciple. According to Chanakya Pandita, One should not be lenient with sons and disciples. Unless he deals strictly with them, he will spoil them. Prabhupada's anger in Vrindavana was not, however, a mere exercise in student training. He strongly desired to see the temple solidly established. He trusted that his disciples were sufficiently loyal to him to withstand the pain of chastisement and take it for what it was, mercy. Prabhupada was vigilant about the devotees' attendance at the morning devotional program in the temple. Calling for the temple president, he asked why some devotees were regularly absent. Mangala Arati, he said, was very important and everyone must attend. Punctuality was also important. The exact time for Mangala Arati would vary according to the clock, he said, but it must always be 1.5 hours before sunrise. Prabhupada would take his morning walk, timing it so he would be back in the temple a few moments before the deity doors were supposed to open for darshana. Once, when he was waiting with all the devotees gathered around, he looked at his watch and then asked Akshayananda Swami, "What's the time?" Aware that Srila Prabhupada was speaking with exactitude, Akshayananda replied that it was 30 seconds after 7:30. Prabhupada shook his head and with a resigned look he said, it is very difficult to be a Brahmana. 30 seconds late. Why are they taking so long to dress the deity? Akshayananda explained that the deity dressing took about 1.5 hours. They are simply lazy, Prabhupada replied. How long it should take? Srila Prabhupada, half an hour at most. Akshayananda was flabbergasted. Since he knew of no pujari who could come even close to that, he remained silent. What is the difficulty? Prabhupada challenged. Half an hour at most. Shortly after Prabhupada had arrived, he had noticed that the path leading to the front gate was not clean. He had complained strongly. Why this is not clean? It should be cleaned by the time daybreak comes. I want to see this cleaned. The temple commander, a young Englishman from Australia named Harishauri, was supposed to supervise all the cleaning, but he had taken much of it for himself. After hearing Prabhupada's remarks about the pathway, Harishauri had resolved it to rectify the problem. Immediately after Mangalarti, he would run out of the temple to the front of the temple, throw water on the stone pathway, and madly run the large squeegee over the front steps and walkway so that by the time Prabhupada came by, most of the area would be sparkling clean. And by the time he would return from his walk, all the outdoor walkways would be clean. Srila Prabhupada didn't say anything further about the walkway, which seemed to be a positive sign. Getting the devotees to ring the bell in the temple dome on time was a major effort for Srila Prabhupada, as was getting them to ring the bell in the temple hall at all. His desire was that the bell in the temple dome should sound an hour and ring once every half hour. The grounds watchman or chowkidar was supposed to do it, and Gunarnava was to see that he did. But for weeks there were problems, especially during the hours of night, when the chowkidar tended to fall asleep. For Srila Prabhupada, the undependable bell ringing revealed much about the overall temple management in Vrindavan. He made it clear, I am judging the management of this temple by ringing of the bell. If the night watchman was sleeping and if the temple leaders could not execute a simple order, how would the temple and guest house with all their complexities operate smoothly? Akshayananda Swami and Gunaranava sometimes thought that they would never solve the problem of the bells, especially since they already had so many other things to do. But Srila Prabhupada was relentless. Whenever the bell missed by even a few minutes, he would demand to know what was wrong. During the night, he was usually the only one not sleeping, but he would wake Akshayananda and others and reprimand them if the bell failed. One night at midnight, he woke Harikesha, his traveling secretary. Do you hear that? demanded Srila Prabhupada. Harikesha strained to hear. I don't hear anything. You can't hear it? Repeated Prabhupada. I'm sorry, but I can't hear anything. That's right. Go out there and wake up the chowkidar and make him ring the bell. Harikesha went out into the darkness, woke the sleeping chowkidar, got him to ring the bell, and then returned to sleep. And so did the chowkidar. At 12:30, Prabhupada again rang. Did you hear it again? No, Srila Prabhupada, said Harikesha. So go out and wake him again. In addition to getting the temple doom bell to ring on time, getting both the bells to operate properly was also a problem. The bells were of heavy brass, worked by a rope. Prabhupada wanted the bell in the temple to be rung constantly during the Arati Kirtanas. It took weeks for Gunarnava to arrange it, and the bell in the temple dome was particularly difficult, since the rope rubbed the stone walls and soon snapped. The thicker rope Gunarnava got simply spoiled the clarity of the chime and made the ringing uneven, which Prabhupada immediately noticed. Gunarnava tried a chain too heavy, a nylon rope, it broke. Materials were scarce in Vrindavana, and each change meant another day, sometimes days. Nothing seemed to make the bell work properly. Srila Prabhupada told Gunarnava to try a pulley. Somehow Gunarnava couldn't surrender to that particular instruction. He thought the rope would just jump the track. One of the devotees did purchase a pulley, but Gunarnava said it was useless. When Prabhupada called Gunarnava to his room and demanded, Where are the pulley wheels? Gunarnava said he had sent them back. You rascal, Prabhupada shouted. I'm asking for pulleys and you are sending them back. Gunarnava apologized, ran out and got a pulley. It didn't work. Then he got the idea of designing a bracket with a hole in it. The next morning, Prabhupada came out of his room and walked around to the front of the temple to check on the bell. For Gunarnava and others, the whole affair was becoming unbearable. Let us hear the bell, said Prabhupada. Giving mighty tugs to the rope, a devotee rang the bell again and again. No, that's wrong, said Prabhupada. Gunarnava showed Prabhupada the wooden bracket arrangement, and Prabhupada thought it was a good idea. Gunarnava even tried to improve it by greasing the hole, and it worked for a while, but then the rope snapped again. Prabhupada's morning walks were usually filled with managerial and administrative talks, as he pointed out how the devotees could prevent being cheated, how they could save and collect money, how they could keep the temple clean, and so on. These talks were directed at specific individuals and were usually marked by criticism. Morning walks, therefore, were sometimes tense. One morning, Gunarnava invited Prabhupada to see the new book display. In a sincere effort to please Prabhupada, the devotees had set up a book display just inside the entrance to the temple. There were bookshelves with built-in lighting, a display case, and a counter for sales. Showing off the book display was a triumph for the temple managers. The lights worked, and Srila Prabhupada's books were neatly placed. The GBC secretary from Vrindavana, Gopalakrishna, was also present, telling Srila Prabhupada that actually the temple was first class and that things were now going smoothly. As Gopalakrishna, Akshayananda Swami, Gunarnava, and others pointed out the features of the book display, Srila Prabhupada was silent, then suddenly agitated. You say that everything is first class, but I see that it is fifth class. Just see. He banged his cane on the floor and then lifted it up, pointing. I have come 6,000 miles to tell you about a bird's nest. The assembled devotees all looked up to behold a large bird's nest within the chandelier. Birds were nesting there amid the protruding straw, yet until now no one had noticed the dirty, unsightly presence. Srila Prabhupada had explained in his letters and books that one duty of a spiritual master is to expose the faults in his disciples, even if the fault is only slight, and the qualified disciple considers himself bereft of spiritual knowledge, always a fool before his spiritual master. He therefore considers the spiritual master's criticisms as mercy. One day, Srila Prabhupada was meeting with the temple managers. He wanted practical ideas, not sentiments. He complained about overspending in Vrindavana and now in Bombay also, where construction was just beginning. You will squander money here, he said, and Surabhi will squander money there. What is your plan to stop this? What will you do? No one knew what to say. There was a long silence. Finally, Akshayananda spoke up. We will become Krishna conscious. An impractical suggestion, Prabhupada explained. Akshayananda Swami regularly expected the thunderbolt, but that didn't keep him from wanting to be with Srila Prabhupada. On one morning walk, Prabhupada mentioned how the climate in Vrindavana was very harsh, both in summer and in winter. In winter, he said the cold would sometimes be accompanied by rain. But Prabhupada said Akshayananda, even if it rains stool and urine and pus and blood from the sky, still we should stay in Vrindavana. Srila Prabhupada gave an almost impish smile and said, Oh, you are expecting? The devotees burst out laughing. Another time, Akshayananda Swami asked, Is it true that it says in the Shastra that if you pass stool once a day, you are a yogi, twice a day, you are a sense enjoyer, and three times a day, you are a rogi? Is this person? Yes, said Prabhupada, and kept walking. After a while, he added, But don't worry, don't try for passing stool once a day. Acha, responded Akshayananda. Srila Prabhupada smiled. Do you think if you pass stool once a day that you are a yogi?
Mati,
Harishavadi.
can you just pause
Yes,
for
yes.
a while? So we've been uninterruptedly hearing how Srila Prabhupada was chastising his disciples and bringing everything in line. So one thing that we clearly see here is that Prabhupada was very particular about rendering service to Krishna the way it is meant to be rendered. For example, even 30 seconds of delay for an arati was unacceptable. Even 30 seconds, Prabhupada was, it was unacceptable. Similarly, cleanliness. Prabhupada, Gurujan Prabhu in his book, My Glorious Master, he brings out, he presents an anecdote where Prabhupada strongly says, cleanliness is not next to godliness. Cleanliness is godliness. And so Prabhupada took great pains to practice these things himself about punctuality, cleanliness, and he tried to bring devotees to the standard that Srila Prabhupada himself, and he tried devotees to bring and he tried to bring devotees to the standard that he himself followed. So if Prabhupada was strong here, it is for the sake of instructing his disciples. And as Satsurup Maharaj rightly points out, that here it is, where he says that, just a second. Srila Prabhupada had explained in his books and letters that one duty of a spiritual master is to expose the faults in his disciples, even if the fault is only slight. And the qualified disciple considers himself bereft of spiritual knowledge, always a fool before a spiritual master. He therefore considers the spiritual master's criticisms as mercy. And this is the reason why the Krishna conscious movement succeeded. Because when Prabhupada instructed his disciples, he chastised his disciples, they took it as mercy. And therefore, the movement succeeded because that kept bringing things to a higher and higher and higher and higher standard, and in trying to please Srila Prabhupada. Any thoughts or comments or questions? We have had a series of chastisements by Srila Prabhupada. I think it goes on a little bit more. So, Mataji, you can continue. Then we can open up for questions or comments. Please go ahead.
Yes, yes. Harishauri had little personal association with his spiritual master. But one day in Vrindavana, Prabhupada asked to see him to point out a serious discrepancy. As temple commander, Harishauri had asked an old man not to eat in front of the deity in the temple. The old man had become upset, and a young Bengali man had defended him, shouting at Harishauri that he had no right to criticize anyone in the temple. Harishauri had attempted to ignore him, but the young Bengali had continued shouting and threatening to throw him out of the temple and cut off his shikha. Finally, Harishauri had twisted the young man's arm and had told the Chaukidar to throw him out. Srila Prabhupada soon heard of the incident and called for Harishauri. How inauspicious, Harishauri thought. The first time my spiritual master has ever called for me, and it's over a bad incident like this. Prabhupada did not immediately reprimand him, but first asked for his version of what had happened. Harishauri appreciated the opportunity and he began to tell the whole story. When he mentioned that the old man had asked to speak with an authority and that he had told him he was the temple commander, Srila Prabhupada interrupted. Hmm. Prabhupada gave his disciple a penetrating glance. Temple commander does not mean commander in chief. Where have you heard this? About eating prasadam in front of the deity? Harishauri could not remember the exact reference and he became embarrassed. Well, I thought I read it in one of your books, Srila Prabhupada, he said. Prabhupada looked at him again. He could understand his disciple's ignorant mistake. Because of the boy's inexperience in India, he had not understood the serious implications of what he had done. Actually, because of the sensitive relationship between ISKCON devotees and the residents of Vrindavana, he should have tolerated the abuse. His was an ignorant mistake, but ignorance was no excuse. This is a great offense, said Prabhupada. He will go out and tell so many people that the foreigners have thrown him out. This is very bad. Prabhupada looked gravely at Harishauri. Now you found out where this man is staying, he said, and you bring him back here. Invite him to come back. Harishauri tried his best, looking all day for the young Bengali man who was reportedly staying at a hotel in Mathura. He was unsuccessful, however. Disappointed, he returned to the temple, and as soon as he returned, a devotee came and told him Prabhupada wanted to see him. Oh no, he thought. Now Prabhupada will really be angry. Harishauri entered Srila Prabhupada's room, which was filled with guests. This boy has come, said Prabhupada. And Harishauri looked around. He saw the young Bengali man. The man smiled and said, Hare Krishna. They embraced and began to make apologies. So you give him this fruit, said Prabhupada to Harishauri, indicating a basket of fruit sitting on the floor. He then dismissed them and continued preaching to the others in the room. The disagreement was settled, but it had been Prabhupada himself who had changed the young man's heart and rectified a volatile incident. One of the Prabhupada's women disciples in Vrindavana, who got the benefit of his criticisms, was Daivi Shakti, who was responsible for cleaning Prabhupada's quarters. Others helped her, but she was the supervisor. When Srila Prabhupada noticed a glass that had not been polished, he asked who was doing the cleaning, and his servant replied, Devi Shakti. Oh, she must do everything. Prabhupada replied, it was far from being as heavy as some of his criticisms of the temple managers. But Devi Shakti took it as an indication that she should become much more attentive to the details of her service. Kishori Devidasi, the deity's cook, inquired from Srila Prabhupada about certain aspects of her service. Cook for Krishna as for a young man was a big appetite, he advised her. Krishna should get 10 puris, 4 chapatis, lots of rice, 2 samosas, 2 kachoris, 2 vadas, and 2 of each sweet. The cooked preparation should be served hot. So now you have to teach everyone how to cook, he said. You have to give everyone what you have received. Kishori would also bring a garland of Srila Prabhupada in the afternoon. To make it cooling, She would sprinkle it with water. For 2 days, Prabhupada said nothing. But on the third day, he remarked, "Take this away. Why do you put water like that? It's very displeasing." Vishala had a practice which other devotees considered eccentric of standing at the gate and loudly reciting Sanskrit. Krishna, should we scroll through?
Again, Rudradeep Prabhu, Hare Krishna. Something has happened to today. Okay, got it.
Vishala had a practice which other devotees consider eccentric of standing at the gate and loudly reciting Sanskrit verses as Srila Prabhupada passed. One morning, Prabhupada approached the gate in a thunderbolt mood, and as usual, Vishala came forward reciting verses. "Why don't you do something useful?" Prabhupada said. "Sweep this waterway." Srila Prabhupada would sample the guest house cooking daily, often suggesting how to improve the quality. Each day, Navayogendra would bring Prabhupada a plate from the restaurant and then note down Prabhupada's comment on each preparation. The following day, the cooks would attempt to improve the food based on Prabhupada's remarks. And so it was with each department. Even when riding in the car, Prabhupada would ask, "You are having it oiled regularly? You are having it lubricated and serviced?" Other temples were homes away from home, said Prabhupada, but Vrindavana was home. Those who wished to live there with him, however, had to pass the test of his constant scrutiny and sharp criticism. They had to accept the hard work and austerity. And special austerities meant special blessings. When a devotee asked to be excused from his duties in Vrindavana to operate a farm in the West, Prabhupada said that even opening 20 farms would not be as important as remaining in Vrindavan. Those who persevered eventually began to see all difficulties as nectar, as had been expressed by Bhaktivinoda Thakura. "When difficulties arise in service, I find them source of happiness." On our On Radhastami, Srila Prabhupada laid the cornerstone for a large Gurukula building adjacent to the Krishna Balaram Mandir. He said that when it was built, the devotees should accommodate 500 students there from all over the world. Through the gorgeous temple, the guest house, and soon the Gurukula, Srila Prabhupada intended to draw as many people as possible to the shelter of Krishna in Vrindavana. For this end, he was willing to sacrifice everything, even his peaceful writing, and for this end, he also demanded his disciples to sacrifice. Should I continue to go? Constant?
Yeah, okay. I think that you can stop here for
Yes.
for a little while.
Yes.
And one thing that we notice here is that Prabhupada was particular that we do everything properly. For example, we are using a vehicle to render service to Krishna, but the vehicle itself should be oiled, lubricated, serviced. So like that, our own bodies are instruments in serving Krishna. So we should also, we are not the body. Therefore, because we are not the body, we should not think that the body just works according to the whims of my mind. No, the body doesn't work according to the whims of my mind. Rather, the body is a machine. It works according to the principles of mechanics that Krishna has designed for the machine. So therefore, the machine of the body also has to be oiled regularly and lubricated and serviced. I mean, analogously, we need to understand that we are not the body. Sometimes people think that, oh, we are not the body. So what is the use of giving so much attention to the body? You know, so that is ignorance. In fact, quite often it is because they think they're the body. They think, okay, whatever the mind is saying, okay, it just goes by that. Okay, I think I just go on to devotional service. But if the moment you understand you're not the body, then you begin to think, okay, I'm not the body. Body is a separate entity. The separate entity. I mean, entity means it's a machine, not a living being. If it's a machine. So if it's a machine, I also need to handle the body just like we need to handle machines. So like that, Prabhupada is particular about every single thing. Like here, he's going on a walk and he notices that there is water. So Prabhupada considers sweeping that water more important than chanting Sanskrit shlokas at that point. So he tells Vishal Prabhu, sweep this water away. Why don't you do something useful? It's not that chanting the verse is not useful. That's not. So contextually, if you look at it, this is what Prabhupada is trying to say. There's something more important there to be done here, rather than chanting Sanskrit shlokas now. Okay, so these are a few thoughts and comments. If there are any comments by any of the devotees in attendance or questions, we can take them now. This is not the end of the session. We'll read some more. Okay, Indulekha Kripamataji, you can please go ahead.
Yes. Constant travel, Srila Prabhupada said, was becoming more and more inconvenient. One reason for his return to India. But he was by no means stopping. Unless he traveled, his movement could not remain vital and healthy. So he was prepared, despite inconvenience, to continue touring. Disciples never stopped inviting him to travel. And recently, Pushta Krishna Swami had asked him to come to South Africa. When Prabhupada agreed, Pushta Krishna had quickly arranged 10 festivals and other engagements in Durban and Johannesburg, covering a period of 3 weeks in October. Devotees on the predominantly Hindu island of Mauritius had also requested Prabhupada to visit, mentioning that the Prime Minister wanted to meet him. Prabhupada agreed, leaving Vrindavana, making brief stops in Delhi, Ahmedabad, and Bombay. He was off to Africa. Mauritius, October 1, 1975. Relieved of management, Prabhupada was freer now to lecture to interested gatherings. Receptions by the press and government ministers in Mauritius was good, but most public questions reflected a lack of sincere interest in spiritual knowledge. Is it necessary to be a vegetarian? Is the soul locked in the third eye? You seem dogmatic. Is there any doubt in your philosophy? Nevertheless, people were respectful and considered Srila Prabhupada an important leader and spiritual authority. He remained there a week. Durban, October 5. This was Prabhupada's first visit to South Africa. For 2 years, the devotees there had been trying to get him a visa, but the government was wary of foreign missionaries. The bureaucratic delays, therefore, had taken months. The devotees had even had to send copies of Prabhupada's books for the government officials to review. Every night for a week, Srila Prabhupada delivered public lectures to crowds of at least 1,000, mostly Hindus, but also many whites. After Prabhupada's lecture at the University of Durban, West Village, a member of the faculty tried to discredit the lecture by stating, well, this is just the Hindu concept. Repeatedly, Srila Prabhupada tried explaining how the principles of Krishna consciousness were universal and scientific. But the man kept replying that it was Hindu culture. Dr. S.P. Olivier, rector of the university, sympathized with Prabhupada's presentation and stayed afterward to speak at length with him. I think you are quite right, Dr. Olivier began. But very few people tonight got the point you were trying to make, that this is a scientific reality. Johannesburg, October 12th. Srila Prabhupada's arrival at the Johannesburg airport was culturally extraordinary for South Africa. White men bowing down before an Indian. The devotees had borrowed a yellow Mercedes Benz and had parked it in a spot reserved for the state ministers and other dignitaries. No one objected. As Srila Prabhupada arrived, devotees threw flower petals. Some young European onlookers bowed down, and the police, impressed by all the protocol, saluted Srila Prabhupada and respectfully opened the door to his Mercedes. As in Durban, Prabhupada's lectures were well attended. He was keen to have his books sold during these programs, and he would go to the book booths and ask his disciples, are they buying the books? He was concerned that the Europeans, not just the Hindus, buy the books. Prabhupada spoke strongly against racial discrimination, but unlike Mahatma Gandhi, who had been imprisoned in South Africa for his outspoken views, Prabhupada spoke on the authority of scripture. What is this black-white business? He said. It is nonsense. It is the bodily concept of life. In South Africa, such statements would ordinarily have been considered volatile politics, and everyone appreciated Srila Prabhupada because he spoke on a purely spiritual level. One of Prabhupada's disciples in South Africa, Riddha, asked privately how to deal with the racial issue in Johannesburg. The only solution, Prabhupada said, was mass Harinam Sankirtana. When Riddha asked about starting a farm community, Prabhupada replied, don't be so eager to move out to the country. The preaching is in the cities, he said. He was very pleased with what his disciples had done in South Africa within such a short time. While Prabhupada was in Johannesburg, Rameshwara and company fulfilled their promise and reached him with copies of both volumes of the fifth canto of Srimad Bhagavatam. Srila Prabhupada took the books with him to his lecture at one university and quoted from them, speaking on Lord Rishabhadeva's instructions, beginning with the verse in which Rishabhadeva advises his sons not to live for sense gratification. Mauritius, October 24. Prabhupada had returned to meet with the Prime Minister. As a friendly gesture, the Prime Minister had sent a chauffeured car for Prabhupada's use in Mauritius. One day, Prabhupada was leaving to take a ride in the countryside, but as he was about to enter the car on the right side, Pushtakrishna Swami suggested, Srila Prabhupada, come to the other side, it's safer. And Prabhupada complied. For half an hour, they rode through the beautiful countryside past sugarcane fields, mountains, and the ocean. At one point, they stopped and walked along a cliff beside the sea. When they returned to the car, Brahmananda Swami opened the right side door and Prabhupada said, no, the other side is safer, just as Krishna had previously suggested. A few minutes later, as Prabhupada's black Citroen car was rounding a curve, a Volkswagen suddenly appeared, heading toward them in the same lane. Prabhupada was seated behind Pushtakrishna and Ramananda was seated behind the driver. The moment before the Volkswagen had appeared, Srila Prabhupada had sat up cross-legged, planting his cane against the floor of the car to support himself. As the Volkswagen rushed towards them, the chauffeur braked, swerving to the left, but the Volkswagen swerved in the same direction. There was a head-on collision. Pushtakrishna's head hit the windshield, cracking the glass. The driver's head also slammed against the glass, and his face was covered with blood. In the back seat, Srila Prabhupada remained sitting, his face set gravely. Brahmananda, in shock, suddenly embraced Prabhupada as if to protect him, although the danger had already passed. Brahmananda then jumped out of the car to try and flag down a motorist, and Pushtakrishna got out and opened the back door, where he found Srila Prabhupada with his face bruised, his leg bleeding, and pieces of glass scattered at his feet. Prabhupada didn't speak or indicate how he felt. Suddenly, Pushtakrishna realized that the car, disabled on a curve, was in a dangerous position. So he joined Brahmananda in the road to caution motorists and to try to get someone to stop. The Citroen and the Volkswagen were totaled. And the man and woman in the Volkswagen were both injured. Motorists soon stopped, and when the injured person had received help, Prabhupada and the devotees got into a car and rode back to the temple. Harikesha was waiting anxiously, wondering why Srila Prabhupada was so late, when suddenly Prabhupada entered, walking very stiffly, saying nothing. When Harikesha saw all three were injured, he cried out, "My God, what happened? What happened?" But Srila Prabhupada just walked to his quarters and sat down, silent. A devotee brought bandages for the obvious injuries. Prabhupada's chin, hand and leg, and Pushtakrishna's and Brahmananda's heads. Srila Prabhupada had said nothing since the accident. Finally, he spoke. Asannapi kleshadda asadeha. And he translated, as soon as you accept this material body, there are so many difficulties. We were sitting peacefully in the car, and the next moment, crash. He talked briefly about the collision, and Brahmananda Swami told how just before the accident, Prabhupada had braced himself with his cane, preventing perhaps more serious injuries. Get some resin and turmeric, Prabhupada said. Mix it together with a bit of lye and heat it. Prabhupada was again speaking Bhagavata philosophy and practical medical remedies. It remained a frightening event, however, and Prabhupada asked the devotees to have Kirtana. Krishna had saved them, he said. Considering that both cars had been destroyed, the injuries were negligible. Prabhupada sat like a battle anointed in three places with the yellow poultice, while Harikesha read aloud from Chaitanya Charitamrita the disappearance of Haridas Thakura. Then Srila Prabhupada began talking about the dangers of traveling, questioning the advisability of his extensive touring. His mission of translating Srimad Bhagavatam and other Vaishnava literature was too important for him to be risking his life traveling in automobiles. He had been considering a visit to Nairobi before returning to Bombay, but now he said he would cancel his visit. He said he had never wanted to leave Bombay, but because they had made so many arrangements in Africa, he had come. Perhaps the accident was a sign that he should go back to India. The next morning, with Brahmananda Swami and Pushtakrishna Swami hobbling along, Prabhupada went on his morning walk as usual, although he favored his injured knee. Again, he discussed with disciples whether he should go on to Nairobi or return to India. Chavana, the president of ISKCON Nairobi, argued that Prabhupada should go to Nairobi. The devotees, they were expecting it, he said, and they had made arrangements. If Prabhupada cancelled now, he would probably not come back for a long time. Others, however, argued that there was no question of asking Srila Prabhupada to keep going now after this traumatic accident. He should go directly to Bombay. Prabhupada heard both opinions, but he was more affected by the consideration of disappointing the devotees in Nairobi than of recuperating after the accident. He decided to go to Nairobi. But after only a few days in Nairobi, Prabhupada became anxious to return to India. Reports were reaching him about mismanagement in Bombay and about building materials being stolen from the property through a conspiracy involving workers, the storekeeper, and the chowkidars. When Srila Prabhupada heard this, he became so morose he stopped translating. He even stopped eating. Although thousands of miles from Bombay, he was feeling the pain more than any of the devotees did. Many of them, in fact, were not even aware that the theft was taking place. When Brahmananda Swami asked Prabhupada why he wasn't eating, he replied, "How can I eat when my money is being stolen?" Bombay now.
Mataji, we'll stop
Yes,
there for today.
yes,
It's a good point in terms of now he comes back to India. So I think we have only a few more pages in this chapter. So let's just finish it. Let's just finish it. We have okay.
should I continue, Prabhu?
Yes, Mataji, we have only a couple of pages
Yes.
more.
Yes.
Yeah, so let's finish
Yes.
this chapter.
Yes, continue. Bombay, November 1. Srila Prabhupada's plane from Nairobi arrived in Bombay at 1 a.m. Even at such an early hour, he was greeted at the temple by a gathering of intimate life members, disciples, and even some of the tenants on the land. When the group followed him to his room, he confided that he had had a serious accident, and he even showed them the scar on his knee. He said he was relieved to be back. In a letter from Bombay, he wrote, "The accident was very disastrous, but still Krishna saved. Perhaps I may stay here for some time for finishing our temple construction on this land." ISKCON Bombay was Srila Prabhupada's office, and he immediately got to work. He fired the engineer whom he held responsible for the poor, slow work, and stolen building materials. At first, Prabhupada had tried to avoid hiring a construction company by having Surabhi oversee the whole project, assigning work to various subcontractors, but that wasn't working. Srila Prabhupada wanted a change, but there was no clear alternative. "We have come to Krishna consciousness for a life of eternal bliss," he said to Surabhi. "But instead of eternal bliss, I am suffering eternal anxiety." He appealed to Surabhi, Giriraja, and the other to do something. One day, a life member, a construction engineer, visited the site and told Srila Prabhupada the temple and hotel could easily be completed in 6 months. Prabhupada then berated Surabhi, who said that 6 months' time was not enough. "Now I am nowhere," thought Surabhi. "I am losing my service." Then another life member, Mr. Om Prakash Dev, the chief engineer with the ECC, one of India's largest, most reputable construction companies, came to the Sunday feast and examined the work. Appalled at the poor quality, he said that after 2 or 3 years it would fall apart. Giriraja, impressed with the idea of hiring Bombay's biggest, most competent construction firm, spoke with Prabhupada, who was also interested. At first, Surabhi resented that the work was being taken out of his hands, but after meeting with Mr. Deer, he also liked the proposed change. The contract was made with ECC, and Mr. Deer presented a progress chart detailing each phase of the work and showing when it would be completed. Srila Prabhupada was pleased with their professional methods despite the higher cost. Now the work would be done as professionally and as quickly as possible, and this was what mattered most. Prabhupada stayed for the greater part of November, and the construction progressed quickly. There was no question of cutting corners to save a little money. Prabhupada explained to Sudan, the temple had to be a beautiful jewel so that people from all over India would want to come and stay. During the Vrindavana construction, Prabhupada had emphasized, "Why so much? Why not just simple?" But now he was stressing, "Why not more? The temple should be opulent and ornate, with marble everywhere. The hotel should be the finest, with beautifully furnished rooms and an elegant restaurant. And the air-conditioned theater building should be one of the best in Bombay. Why not marble on the floors?" asked Prabhupada, speaking of the hotel rooms. "It's going to be very expensive," said Surabhi. "Don't worry about the money," Prabhupada said. "Can we put marble on the floor? Then do it." Surabhi did it, but tried to save money by putting a cheaper stone in the hotel hallways. When Prabhupada saw it, he was displeased. "It should have been all marble," he said. Funds Funds for the Bombay construction came primarily from the sale of books in America, and Srila Prabhupada was regularly receiving reports. On November 18, Rameshwara sent a telegram with some of the good news. 1 million copies of BTG just printed. Devotees gone wild. Promised to distribute all within 1 month. Spanish Gita just off the press, bringing hundreds of millions to your lotus feet. All possible by your mercy. When the temple president and ISKCON Denver wrote asking about starting a jewelry business, Srila Prabhupada wrote back disapproving. "Why are they doing business? This creates a bad atmosphere. Why shall only we shall only do one business, and that is book selling. That's all. As soon as you become karmis after business, then spiritual life becomes damaged. This business should not be encouraged anymore. Doing business and not Sankirtana, that is not at all good. Sankirtana is very good, but Grihasthas under condition can do other businesses only if they give at least 50%. But Sankirtana is the best business. Prabhupada envisioned that book distribution could not only finance Bombay construction, but could also support his even more ambitious plans for Mayapur. Book distribution was good business and it was the best preaching. It was Prabhupada's formula. American money combined with India's spiritual culture, and he encouraged Rameshwara to motivate the Sankirtana in USA in accordance with his principle. America has the money, so this is cooperation between the blind men and lame men. It will make good relations between India and America. The next chance I have for meeting with Indira Gandhi, I shall inform her about how much foreign exchange we are sending. After receiving your encouraging assurance that as book distribution increases, the amount of BBT sends will also increase. We are now going to attempt a Kurukshetra project and the Jagannath Puri project. For the time being, we are spending in India, but eventually we will spend everywhere. This will greatly enhance the Americans' spiritual position. Always remain dependent on Guru and Krishna, and your progress will always be assured.
Jai. So we see here how Prabhupada wants ISKCON to focus on its main business, which is book distribution. Of course, during Prabhupada's own time, they had also a spiritual sky, which is incense. But again, that's direct paraphernalia related to deity worship. However, for some other business, Prabhupada says the Grihasthas can do it, provided they give at least 50%. But Sankirtan is the best business. So, Prabhupada, we see here that he talks about convincing Indira Gandhi about how much foreign exchange is being sent by ISKCON. And we notice here that he has ideas of a project at Kurukshetra, which is actually finishing now, as we are talking. And Jagannath Puri project, which is not yet manifested, but we've got land. For the time being, we're spending in India, but eventually we'll spend everywhere. That will greatly enhance the American spiritual position. Prabhupada ends the letter by saying, always remain dependent on Guru and Krishna, and your progress will always be assured. Hare Krishna. Okay, so we've come to the end of today's session. What comments from anyone or what questions? Come on. We've got 13 participants today.
Hare Krishna Prabhuji, this is not the question or anything. This is just like, it was really like for 2 month break almost from this class, Prabhuji. It was really, really very disappointing or very sad thing because that was really, especially Kartik month, and we were not having the association or a reading of Prabhupada's books, which were really like a loss or something missing. It was, I was feeling. Because every week it was a ritual, like to sit and I was always reading also. It was really giving me a lot of pleasure and all. It's just a thought.
Yeah, I mean, the reason that I could not take classes was I had taken my son to Vrindavan, and for 1 month, Vaisheshika Prabhu was reading Srila Prabhupada's books for 5 hours non-stop. I mean, non-stop means morning session and the evening sessions, but 5 hours every day. and my son was very keen to participate in those sessions, and he couldn't go if I'm not there with him. So I placed that as a priority, um, because Prabhupada said that child worship is more important than deity worship. So I wanted to give him that. If he has an eagerness to hear, why not place that as the priority? So yes, so I had to choose between continuing this, being in Mayapur, but in Vrindavan, and it was Govardhan. The internet connectivity was pretty bad. I mean, so that's why I wrote that I wouldn't be able to do it, because I already checked it there, and the connectivity was not so uh, great there. So that was the reason that I was not able to take classes at that point in time.
But it's not a complaint, Guru. It's not a
No, no.
complaint or
I
anything.
mean, I'm
It's
just
just like that
clarifying.
missing
Just
that.
clarifying. I
Yeah.
know it is not a complaint.
Yeah.
Just clarifying.
Yes, Guru.
I'm also very glad that we have resumed this somehow.
Yes.
And I did come back to Mayapur earlier than what I'd supposed to come. But then there were Krishna Chandra Prabhu from Malaysia was here. So he said, he came on a yatra. He said, Prabhu, you promised that you will start after Kartik. So if you start now, I'm going to be missing it. So I had to maintain my original
Thank you, Prabhu. Thank you.
original commitment of original statement of resuming after Kartik.
Hare Krishna Prabhu.
Yes, Mataji.
Yeah, I just wanted to share a very important aspect that you brought out today, that how important it is for us to make serious devotees in ISKCON, and not just to bring people to as beginners just start chanting or whatever. Yeah, though we do that, or we try, but this was very, very stark, and I think it's something which I definitely want to take away and see how I can contribute to that. Yeah, because as you know, we are a small community of devotees, and there are always challenges in the community, somebody or the other. So I would definitely like to try and see how I can help all the community members, so that we can all go deeper into Krishna consciousness and make devotional service as the priority for us, or whatever, not even priority, as the thing for us. As Harilila Prabhu always says, that's it, 100% Krishna consciousness, nothing else. That's the only way back home to Godhead. So,
Yeah, that's
thank
the
you
point.
very much.
Yeah, I mean, that's the point, that because as time progresses, there are different notions of Krishna consciousness that have entered into the Krishna consciousness movement. But the original notion should remain. I mean, everything else is nice. Okay, people are chanting Hare Krishna, we're doing so many things. All that is fine. But the 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 the, the core notion or the core idea is that our mission is to make people into pure devotees. That should not be forgotten. Chanting is the way to make pure devotees, chanting Hare Krishna. But chanting Hare Krishna alone is not enough. They need to also take up to the practice of Krishna consciousness as prescribed in the Bhakti Shastras. They need to take up the practice of pure devotional service. Yeah, I mean, again, to clarify, it is not, I mean, it's good that many people are chanting Hare Krishna and things like that. It's good. But the real thing is, have they taken to Krishna consciousness seriously? The reason that I'm bringing this up is because when different preachers come up with different methods of preaching, quite often the reason that they give, the measure of success that they attribute is, say, how many people are chanting Hare Krishna by this initiative. That's not good enough. How many people have taken to pure devotional service with this initiative? And one aspect of taking to pure devotional service is whether they accept Prabhupada's teachings in his books. Prabhupada is a Mahajana. He's representing the previous acharyas. So it's not that Prabhupada, oh, they like Prabhupada, they're chanting Hare Krishna, they like Prabhupada. No, they are chanting Hare Krishna. Are they willing to surrender to the instructions that Srila Prabhupada has given?
Yeah, thank you, Prabhu. Thank you so much. Hare
Hare Krishna. What else? Sailesh Govinda Prabhu, you always have the last word. You want to say something?
Hare Krishna Prabhuji, really before this, like there was a break. Really, I had a question. Really, it's not that this one, because after Janma, I had some serious health issues and I was hospitalized, Prabhuji. So I had to undergo one procedure. So really, I was conscious and they were giving me the local anesthesia and doing that procedure and all. So like I was really chanting Narsimha prayers and all when the procedure was going, and I could feel and feel the pain also. So the thing is that Prabhuji, I was constantly chanting Lord's names and all, but when there was the real pain, that I had forgotten all these prayers, but I was just telling Ayo or Amma or like that. I was just screaming. So how can we? I was just really so what to say. I got so scared to say, or I don't know what the feeling was. So see, so when the small pain was there, I was not able to chant. Really, when that really mattered, I was not able to chant Lord's name. So when we leave our body, how what will be our position? So can you just tell me how we can improve this, or what should be our like method? What how we should go about this?
Uh, Progress in bhakti is normally, it can be fast, but it's incremental. Unless a pure devotee decides to bestow his full mercy upon you and you attain love of God instantly. That's called Kripa Siddhi. But otherwise, it is incremental. It can be fast. Increment does not mean small increments or slow increments, but it's incremental generally. So, Krishna has given you a glimpse of where you are. So we can always be thankful for Krishna, because Krishna often puts us in situations where we get a glimpse of where we are. And once we get a glimpse of where we are, then we can cling on to Krishna, pray to Krishna. You have shown me my standing currently. So let me progress from here. Please help me. So in Krishna consciousness, it is a process of encouragement. Like how Kadambakara Maharaj used often say, you don't have to get depressed about what you're not, but rather you can always think about what you can do. Because by thinking about it, it's not going to go away, right?
Yes.
It's going to remain. So what, instead of thinking about it, you can as well take shelter of Krishna. You already have seen, okay, wherever you are.
Yes.
What's the point of thinking about it now?
Yes.
Okay, you know it. So now take shelter of Krishna.
Yes.
So like this, as we keep taking shelter of Krishna more and more, we make incremental progress. So eventually coming to the stage of love of Godhead, eventually coming to the stage of transcending pain or pleasure, all these kind of things will happen along the way.
Yes. Thank you, Prithvi. Thank you. Really, you have answered my question, because I was really like, how it is possible, because that moment really till then after that also I could, but that pain when it was I was feeling, I was not able to chant. It was not coming out of my mind or my mouth. All other time I was able to. Thank you, Prithvi.
Okay, so then we'll end today's session and we'll resume again the coming Sunday. Thank you all very much for joining. We are in volume 6. We are finishing volume 6, and then we have volume 7, Proper Leela. After that, I'll have to discuss with Mayapur Institute whether we could continue with I'll Build You a Temple, Bombay. Okay, thank you all very much for joining. Vancha kalpatarubhyasya kripasindu bhevacha paritanam